All right, good morning, everyone. Welcome back. Math 154, 11 to 12, 15. Hopefully all of you have already signed up for my math lab, but in case any of you have not, I'm going to give you, and I said one. Yeah, no, one is right. I'm going to give you a slight extension just in case, something curious has happened. I know some people enrolled a little late and I sent an email and then I sent another email. I know in one of those emails I had a typo. It's just been lots of fun technological issues, and I've kind of mentioned some of that over the emails and stuff already. People were in the wrong Zoom meeting for my first class, but that wasn't an issue with us, thankfully. And that was a Canvas glitch that happened. So just lots of fun things. But remember, I absolutely have to have you in my math lab in our course, which I'll flash the ID on the screen again in just a second, by 1 p.m. today. It was supposed to be before class, but in case any of you forgot, you got another like 30 minutes after class to do this, or you will be removed. You will not be allowed back in. You will have to take Math 154 next semester. So in case you haven't done it yet, we are my 11 o'clock class. Please pay no attention to the 9:30. And I got to imagine almost all of you are in there with 21 enrolled out of, I think, 23. But there's still a couple. So Beckner 40333. Again, this is an absolute mandatory thing to do. Okay, so that aside, I have posted your first quiz. Yay, they've already begun. I personally think this is an easy quiz. It's a syllabus quiz. It's not even material. It's just to encourage you to pay attention to the stuff I said last time, because it's all pretty important. Most of it's more important and relative to our course than just talking about, the accommodations and things like that. That's more individualized importance. But knowing the weights of the homeworks, knowing how things are collected, stuff like that. Please pay attention to the instructions. Again, what I've said, two things you'll hear me say 10,000 times are pay attention and ask you, does it make sense? Like for several of the questions, the answer is a number. I need you to type the number, not the word. I think one of the answers is a percent, but I don't want you to type the percent symbol. If you do those wrong, you won't get credit, and I'm not going to give you credit for them if you typed the word or you put a percent symbol in there or didn't pay attention to the format specified. So please pay super, super, super attention to those so we can all get 100s on the syllabus quiz the way it should be. So that is due September 1st by 11:59 p.m. So that's Tuesday. Whenever I have anything due, it's always 11:59 p.m. If I don't mention it, it's 11:59 p.m. I can't imagine another time that I would make something due. And if you turn something in at 12 a.m. the next day, 1 minute later, it's not going to count. Canvas will have already shut it down. There is no late work. Make sure you're on time with this stuff. Remember, you're supposed to be reading ahead. I believe I posted the first 2 chapters worth of what I called notes to share, which are my just very, very brief abbreviated notes that we kind of go over in class kind of briefly, and then get into the guided worksheets. This is kind of like a flipped class if you've ever heard of that, and if not, just know after the fact you'll have an idea what a flipped class feels like. You're responsible for reading things outside of class, not including but not limited to the textbook and those notes to share. How far ahead do you read? 1 section. It's very rare we're going to get 2 sections done in a class. Very rare. So generally just reading 1 section ahead is fine, including the textbook and the notes to share. I'm not asking you to memorize the textbook. I'm asking you to put eyes on it so that you've seen this stuff before. That way when I mention it briefly, it'll be the second time you've seen it and it'll absorb a little more. I want to make sure that my, this is usually my young people in the crowd that grew up on cell phones and nothing but cell phones. How do you save something on a computer? Well, with Microsoft products like Excel, you got the little floppy disk, which again, if you're on the younger side, you may not have ever even heard of these things before. It's an archaic memory system that holds what, like 1.4 megabytes, which is nothing. Web pages are bigger than that now, basic web pages. Or you can go to File and then Save or Save As. Make sure you pay attention to where you're saving it, because this Excel file, as well as the rest of them, you will need to submit to me in one way or another. Now this Excel file, this chapter 01 that you're going to see me build over the next 2 classes, you are expected to be doing this as well, whether it's in synchronicity with me at the same time, or if you're just watching the video and then doing it after, or maybe watching the YouTube version, pausing, doing a little bit, going back. But you have to build the exact file that I'm going to be building over the next 2 classes and submit it to me in Canvas by Thursday, September 3rd, 1 minute before midnight. This is one of only 2 things that are going to be submitted that way. The rest of your Excel homework stay in my math lab. I showed you that little 4-button menu thing that pops up where you download, read instructions, submit, and hit for grading. This is not going to be graded for accuracy. It's the student did it, so they got 100, or they didn't do it, so they get a 0. Now, if you give me a file with only 3 things typed, that's not going to get you 100, clearly. Do this because it's only going to help you. There's no reason to not do this. You're going to see me do it step by step by step, verbatim. I'll do things multiple ways. I'll do some of the things over and over, which brings me to my next point. Practice with Excel over and over and over and over and over and over. You have to do this stuff over and over. If you don't, you're not going to learn it most likely. Most of us learn by practice and repetition. If someone tells me how to do something, not just in Excel in any way, of math, science, I'll go, okay, that's cool, that makes sense. And then a day later, I've forgotten half of it or forgotten how to use it. But if someone tells me it, and then that day, maybe that moment or later that day, I practice it and I practice it again and I practice it again, 2 weeks later, I'll remember it. If you want to make 9 out of 10 free throws, you don't just go on the court and just start throwing and you make them. You have to throw 10,000 practice shots before you can get 9 out of 10. The same is true of everything in life, whether it's physical or mental. All right. So what you're going to see me do is mostly follow the textbook. If I have to, I'll follow the workbook. The workbook is almost identical to the textbook. I haven't decided if I want to put a discussion board up for this chapter 0 workbook or not. However, even if I don't, this is something I told my last class, but I want to write it out. Even if I do not make a discussion board for chapter 0, do the entire thing anyways. Again, because this is your first taste of Excel, answering some of those questions kind of goes in line with practicing. It's reminding you of how you did something. Most of these questions are very easy, like what did you type in this cell? And then you write exactly what you typed in that cell. It's nothing to think about. It's just reminding you of how you did it. Okay, so I haven't decided if I'm going to make one for that or not. I generally don't because of the quiz and the submission anyways. I kind of count this right here as your group work for chapter 0. So I really don't want to do a discussion board. I don't find it necessary, but things change, so I could change my mind. All right, so when we open Excel, first of all, spoilers, this is what where we finished with my last class. So we're going to clear that. So this is what the final product should look like basically, but different numbers because I made these numbers different at the end. It's more like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's the final product basically. And that was an 8%. But we're gonna make a new one, so file, new. Hello, blank document. Question. Yes, this is the same exercise that was in my math lab. It's not the 1.1 heart rate, if that's what you're talking about. It's just the one that's in the guided activities. It's in the textbook. Cool. So if you've already completed, that's awesome. You get to watch me do it today in the next class. Or you can have a sleep if you feel super confident in it. But that's not a suggestion, just blanket. All right, so this is what Excel looks like when you first open it. If you are opening Microsoft Excel's downloadable version, remember, you are required to be using that specifically. You can't use numbers from Apple. You can't use any of those other programs I mentioned because when you go to submit these for grading in my math lab, you are going to lose points here and there throughout the semester. I can absolutely guarantee it. If you're using the online version of it, you'll notice the appearance is a little different. And again, you will be hurt in your grade by using the online version. You have to use the downloaded version. I mentioned that a Chromebook can't even download it, so you're going to have to use another computer to complete these homeworks. If you have trouble accessing one of those computers, talk to, oh man, there's a computer department on the Virginia Beach campus that sells students computers for very, very cheap. I can't remember their name, but it should be easy to find. I need to look at that and then point it out to my students, but you can get a computer for like 25 bucks. There might be a few weeks to wait on it. Computer Club, Computers for Success, that's it, thank you. Computers for Success. All right, so that would be a solution. Otherwise, you have to go somewhere with public computers, and I'm not gonna force anyone to do that, or borrow someone else's computer, I don't know. So this is Excel. Up here, we have our main ribbon. File, home, insert, draw, page layout, formulas, data review, blah, blah, blah. The ones that you'll be using mostly are home and insert, and occasionally formulas if you want to get weird with it. But generally the formulas that we're using, we don't need to go and find all these crazier formulas. We're using 5 basic formulas for the most part. View you can use to zoom in and out, but me personally, I've got a mouse with a scroll wheel on it. So if I scroll up and down, you can see that I'm scrolling down. These numbers are getting larger and larger. Let me scroll back up. But if I hold the control button on my keyboard, which is the bottom left, and it might be command if you're on an Apple. Now if I scroll, I zoom out or in. So I can display a lot more cells, so many that I can't even see these anymore. Or I can zoom in super close and just get real friendly with these 5 or 6 rows and columns. Rows and columns, just used a very important word there. When I click on a cell, that makes it active. So now this cell is active, this cell is active, this cell is active. If I start typing things, it goes in that cell. If I click over here and type, it goes there. If I click here and type the number 5, it goes there. Now, this is not the point of the problem, the point of the exercise, obviously, but the point is you can click and put things in other locations. How do we know where we are? It's called a cell reference. Cell references are based on the letter that you see above here and the row that you see on the left here. The letters denote what we call the column. Columns run vertically. So this is column C, this is column D, this is column E. Think about columns on a fancy building, like a fancy library or a fancy house. They're vertical. That's how you can remember that columns are vertical. I know a lot of people struggle remembering whether columns are vertical or horizontal. Rows are horizontal, they run left and right. Columns are vertical, they run up and down. So all cells are labeled based on the column, so a letter, and then the row, which is a number. So right now, I'm in cell D7 because I'm in column D and I'm in row 7. Look at how the letter is kind of emphasized. It's a little grayer, I guess. Look at how this number is emphasized. So when I click here, I don't really have to count over A, B, C, D, E, F, G and really pay attention. It's highlighted G. Now look over here, 8. A, 1. B, 7. In addition to that, put your eyes right here where my mouse is. That's cell B7. Keep your eyes there. I'm going to click on cell A1. Now it says A1. Keep your eyes here. I'm going to click on cell F2. It changes to F2. So right here is your cell reference labeled as well. So cells are labeled by the column, then the row, like those 3 examples. You can use your mouse to click anywhere you like. Make that cell active, make this cell active. The green border is what tells you when a cell is active. What active means is when I start typing, that's where it's gonna go. So even though my mouse is over here just floating on G3, I haven't clicked it, so it's not active. So when I type, it doesn't go where my mouse is, it goes where I clicked earlier, where I made the cell active. You can highlight several cells, and we'll talk about highlighting and filling and moving in a little bit. And if you type, it still just goes in that top left section. Pay attention where my mouse is right now. I've mentioned this day 1. This is my favorite button. This is the undo button, also known as Control Z if you like your keyboard. The control button will change a lot of features. Shift can also change some, but not a lot. So if I hit Control and Z, that's my undo, or I can just click the undo button. So if I click it, it undoes that. It undoes that. And you can undo over and over and over. Maybe you undoed too far. You can hit redo and go back. Oh, no, I wanted SDGKSJD. That was super important. So let me leave. No, I'm just kidding. So undo and redo, my two favorite features of Excel and pretty much anything. Because guess what? This is a trial and error process. You will do things, as I've probably already said, 100,000 times incorrectly before you do them correct 10,000 times. And that's not just me talking to you. That's talking to me as the president of that club. I have done things wrong in Excel 100,000 times. I learned by doing things wrong first. That's why I don't like working on my house, because I usually have the tendency to say, put a hole in a wall before nailing something appropriately. I'm not saying I've actually done that specifically, but say I paint and maybe you're going to paint something incorrectly and have to redo it. Everybody learns by doing something wrong. Why do we fall? To pick ourselves back up again, for that famous Dark Knight quote. So you can't just sit here and go, I don't know what to do, I don't know what to do, I don't know what to do, and leave it blank. Try something. Try something. Oh, no, that didn't work. Undo. Or maybe you think you're doing something properly, and then all of a sudden you get this weird, wacky result. Oh, nope, undo, and figure out what you did wrong. That was me highlighting cells and hitting delete, by the way, on my keyboard to eliminate a bunch of things. Okay. Nope, forgot to click textbook. So again, we're going to follow along with our textbook some. I might skip a lot of details that I talk about without having it on the screen, but they're all there. When you open Excel, it gives you a blank workbook. Note that it says Book 1-Excel at the top, because we haven't saved it and given it a more appropriate name. And then if you look at the bottom left, you'll see it says Sheet 1, and it might say something a little different depending on your version. But these are where our tabs are, like in an internet browser. Like up here, if I hit this plus button on Chrome, it'll give me a new tab, and I can open 50 or 60 web pages all at once and really bog my computer down. And you can see I tend to have a whole bunch of tabs open for the job, because here's me uploading stuff to YouTube. Here's my Google Drive and Google Docs. TCC page, which leads me to SIS, which leads me to Canvas and Zoom, and I gotta have my math lab open to get to the textbook. So tabs are awesome. Well, in Excel, the new tab button isn't in the top right, it's in the bottom left. So if I want to have a second tab, let me just really quickly type Bob here in cell D5, and also kind of zoomed in a little bit. Watch what happens if I hit plus. It gives me a new tab. I go ahead over to that automatically. And now this is the default format. Everything's blank in that little more zoomed out appearance. And there's no Bob there. If I go back to Sheet 1, that's where Bob was. So I can type over here, hello. And it's not going to be in Sheet 1's page. So these are completely independent of each other. But when you save your file, all the tabs are saved in it. If you double click a tab name, so that was a single click, here's me double clicking, you can rename it. You can name it something a little more appropriate. Specifically, we want to name ours Sales Order Form. And then hit enter. So Sheet 2 stays Sheet 2 with its, not an important name yet, but Sales Order Form is what we're going to be building, as you kind of already saw. So that's how we can just give these a little nicer of a name. Question. What if you want to delete a sheet? You right click and delete. So if I right click, delete, do you want to permanently delete that sheet? Yep, it's gone. And I can plus and get another one back. Typically when you do that, it's still going to increment to the next number in total. So even though Sheet 2 doesn't exist anymore, we deleted it, it's just going to call this Sheet 3. I can rename it Sheet 2 if I want. And make another one, and it's Sheet 4, because again, that 2 is still kind of stuck in its brain. Not that that matters at all. It really doesn't. All right, let me pull back just a couple notches. back to the book. So we labeled our name. By the way, a couple random definitions you'll see in your workbook, which this is the workbook I mentioned that you should be completing on your own, even if I don't request it. Which completion doesn't mean if you need the definitions, you can. That's up to you. Some people do, some people don't. I'm more really saying the questions like these, like what formula did you enter in cell E3? How did you fill it down? What happened to the cell reference when you filled it down? Those are the questions I'm saying you need to answer. So, oh, formula, you can write that definition. A cell reference uses the column and the row. Active cell, that's the one where you're going to type into. Formula bar, that is this thing right here. This is your formula bar. So notice when I click here and I start typing, not only is the typing going here, but it's also going here. This is your formula bar. So as we use formulas shortly, very soon today, well, not very soon, but today definitely. After you hit enter, you might see a number displayed here, but the formula you typed would still be up here. So that's an important aspect. Okay, so inputs and outputs. Inputs are the numbers that go into something. Outputs are what comes out when it's processed. Outputs are found from formulas that you type in Excel when we're talking about Excel. So inputs are numbers that you'll type in, like the 1 hot dog, the 2 sodas, things like that. The output would be Excel processing it and displaying a number, like saying, okay, you had 5 hot dogs that cost $1 each, so the total cost is $5. So one of the many points of Excel is we want it to do the calculations for us. We don't want to have to do 5 times 7 and 3 plus 5 and all these things. We want Excel to be able to take changes in those inputs that we type and then update the numbers. So again, we don't have to do the math. We also love Excel for what is known as batch processing. So I'm going to give you a scenario of batch processing. You got a job, you're making a solid paycheck, getting that bread. Your boss comes to you, and your boss's name is Bob, and he says, hey, you, I've got this file with 10,000 sets of parameters. Here's the formula that it involves. Get me the answer for all 10,000 of those scenarios within 1 hour. And at first, someone's going to freak out and say, there's no way I can do this. They have a panic attack. An hour goes by. Bob, your boss, comes to your desk, asks for all the answers. You say you don't have them. And then Bob says you're fired. Sucks, doesn't it? Well, if you had had Mr. Beckner's Math 154 class, or just some basic Excel tips and tricks anywhere else, you would know that Excel has something called a fill handle. All you have to do is type that formula one single time and then drag it down to all 10,000 rows where all those other parameters are written, those inputs, those numbers your boss already had set up for you. And then Excel, within a split second, would do 10,000 calculations for you. So when your boss comes to you, when your boss Bob says, hey, I need these in an hour, you go, Bob, I got this in 3 minutes. Boom, 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 done. 3 minutes go by, and you go home for the rest of the day. Get a bonus, pat on the back, whatever. Batch processing, because no one wants to sit there and do 10,000 calculations by hand. No one wants to sit there and type 10,000 calculations into a calculator. Excel will do all of that for you with just a quick click and drag, as long as you format things appropriately. Also, charts and stuff are cool. That's another thing Excel can do for us. All right, so we kind of talked about the ribbon with the different names. Just look at them, click on each one to see what different options you have. But again, mainly we'll be sticking to the home, insert, maybe view if you want to change your zoom without a scroll wheel. Then under the home menu, you've got different sub options, which are these things, which they're all kind of grayed out right now because I don't have anything typed. Let me just type a 5 so they're not grayed out. Things like this, where you can change to a currency, or this, where you can change it to a %, or this, where you can paint the cell a different color, or make them bigger or smaller, or put borders around them, bolding, all sorts of different options that you've got. And that color, by the way, is defaulted to a highlighter yellow generally. See me? I'm just playing with the undo button, clearing things out. So there are default options. So this is usually a highlighter yellow. So when I click on a cell and activate it, if I click that, it says, hey, look at me. But most, I don't want to say most, some of these have these little down pointing arrows next to them. If you click that, you get an array of options. So I don't have to just use highlighter yellow. I can use puke green, or I can use kind of charcoal gray, or I can use baby blue. If I highlight several cells and then paint them, it will paint all of them. If I have the number 5 right here, maybe this isn't supposed to be 5, maybe it's supposed to be $5. Well, I can hit the dollar symbol and it formats it to dollars. And it automatically gives you the cents section as well, which is kind of nice because maybe your answer comes up to 5.359. You can't pay 5.359. It would be 536. I had to think about what number I said for a second there. So it would just round to the nearest penny there. If you click the drop-down menu, you can go with other currencies like the pound, or the euro, or the yen. There are a ton more options down here, and I'm not going to go into that menu option because we really don't use it. Or maybe it's not a currency, maybe it's supposed to be a percent. Now hold on, Mr. Beckner, it changed to a 500, something's wrong. No, it's not. 5 was originally a decimal value, which as a percent is 500%, because percents are always move the decimal right to the twice. I was about to say right to the twice. So if you wanted to see 5%, you'd have to type 0.05 and then click the percent symbol. If you notice, that was me hitting enter. Hitting enter makes you go down. Hitting tab makes you go right. Now, control is usually the button that changes features, but in this instance, it's actually shift. And fun fact, in my previous class, it took me about 90 seconds to remember that. I was trying to use controls like my computer's messing up. I don't know what the problem is. I realized that didn't make sense. So I tried something else and I got it to work. These are the things that I hope you will do. I did something wrong. I learned from it and then I did it right. So I am not an Excel master. I am not even close to it. I know more than enough to do this class, but I know how to do things like 2 or 3 ways usually, but with Excel, there's very often 50 or 60 ways to do things. And I'm not going to learn all 50 and 60 because then I'm going to feel inclined to teach it and nobody needs that many methods. So I like my 2 or 3. Let's say I had the number 5 here, and it's not currency, it's not a percent, but I just want it to display a few decimals. I want to see 3 decimal accuracy. These 2 buttons change the decimal display. So if I hit the left one, it shows more decimal places. If I hit the right one, it shows less, but you can't show any less than a whole number. So maybe I want 3 decimals and it's 5.000. Now the display will actually round the number. If this was or let's say this number was actually 4.9999999. When I hit enter, it's going to display 5 because I wanted 3 decimal visual accuracy because that number was 4.99999. So when it rounds it to the nearest 3 decimal places, it bumps it up to 5. See right here, what I typed is still in there, but what it displays is a little different. That can happen. All right, so what do we want to do? We already changed it to sales order form. We did that. My arrow wasn't displaying. There we go. So let's start building this. We're going to get this far on this page where we're going to have the item names, quantity, cost per item along with those numbers, and the cost. So it tells us step by step what to do. So if you're lost listening to me, follow the textbook. So in cell B2, click cell B2 so we make it active, then type in the word item. We see that pressing enter makes us go down to B3. Then we're going to type in those 5 names: soda, water, popcorn, cookie, hot dog. Soda, water. In fact, let me do this. Then I can fix this. I can adjust it. Goes to about here. We're going to just give me about 20 seconds. It gets difficult to do everything without having it all displayed at once. We go left and right. It usually centers everything. Perfect. In fact, I can narrow it just a touch. It's a little more space with Excel. All right, so I'm going to get rid of all that garbage. Delete, highlight, and delete. So cell B2, that's active because of the green border. We're going to type in the word item. Hit enter or click down. That's soda, water, popcorn, cookie, hot dog. Sorry if my keyboard is loud through my mic, by the way. I can't control it. Then we said, it says to click into cell C2 and type in quantity. C2, quantity. And then we're going to go to D2 and type cost per item and some more stuff. But they remind us that if we use tab, it'll go right. If I hold shift and tab, it goes left. Or I can just click, up to you. Now we type cost per item, tab. Let me zoom out just a little. And then pay attention for a second over here. Notice it says cost per item. That line right there is no longer there, but it's not saying that this is in both cells. It's just displaying it. But when I type something in cell E2, when I type cost, now it's just going to display cost per it. I saw a question. I'll get to it in a second. So how can we fix this? Well, one of the 4 different ways your mouse can look is one of the ways to resolve this. We can widen columns and we can make rows taller or shorter by going between the 2 columns. Watch my mouse, pay attention to my mouse. It looks like a thick white plus sign. This is what it looks like almost everywhere inside of Excel. The only time it changes is if you hover over an active cell. Watch it change right now. Now it's a weather vane, except if I'm on this bottom right corner where that little square is, it changes to a thin black plus sign. We're going to talk about what all that does later, soon. For now, we just want to make a column wider, so we take our mouse and we put it between the 2 column labels, not just down here, not just on this line. It has to be where the letters are. It changes to like a vertical line with 2 arrows going out. I can click and hold, and I can drag to make that cell wider. If I do it here, that's going to make C's column wider, and that's not the goal. We want to make D's column wider. All right, question. I'm sorry, what was the course ID for my math lab? I can't. Okay, yes I can. I thought I had been booted out. Oh, I didn't mean to click that. Ah! Beckner 40333. Okay. All right, so let's fill in some other stuff. We want to fill in the cost per item, which were, they say 1 for the soda. Now you'll notice in your workbook these numbers are different. That's okay. It's not the point of the exercise. And you can see that that format I gave earlier is still taking effect. Let me just correct that. There we go. Oops, wrong button. We're doing this. There we go. So 1 for that, we can hit enter. Then it's $1.25 for the water, $1.50 for the popcorn, 50 cents, and you can just type 0.5 and it'll display as 0.5. And then $2.75 for the hot dog. Again, those prices per item are different in your workbook. Disregard it, it's not the important aspect here. The important aspect is learning how to manage things in Excel. All right, then they say to add a few other things below this, not here, but go down to the next one. We type in subtotal, we type in tax at 8%, enter, and then total. Now, I want to go ahead and point out, we are going to change this at the end of today's class. We want to make this a little less rigid. So right now, we're going to be forced to use 8%, but by the end, we'll allow any tax percentage to be used. All right. The next thing they told us to do before I change pages is to bold these 4 things. So let's talk about how we can highlight several cells, which I've already shown you. This is me highlighting cells, not yellow highlighter, just saying, hey, look at all these, and if I wanted to do something to all of them at once, I can do it all at once. So let me maximize. There is no physical textbook. There is no physical textbook, it's only electronic. I lost my train of thought because of that. Oh yeah, bolding, okay. So if I just click where it says item, I can hit this little B and it'll bold it. If I click quantity, I can hit that B again, or I can hit Control B on my keyboard. And I can do that for all of them individually, or I can highlight those four. So I just click on a cell and drag, 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 and then let go. So again, it's click, hold, drag, let go. I can bold them all at once. I could change their colors all at once if that's what I was doing here, which I'm not, so let me undo. So when your mouse looks like that thick white plus sign, that's when you're highlighting. If you try and click on something around a border of an active set of cells, it looks like a weather vane. That does something else. We'll show you soon. All right, I'm gonna go ahead and spoil this. It's gonna be one soda. That was formatted as a percent from me just goofing around earlier. So let me format that as, hit this drop down menu and click general. But since it was 1%, now I gotta fix that as 1. There we go. Look at these costs per items. 1.25. What's the currency? It's an American dollar. So let's make Excel tell us that. So if you click where it says $1 for the soda, click the dollar symbol up here, and now it displays $1.00 with the cash symbol appropriately. You could do that individually for all 5, or you can just highlight all 5 and click the dollar symbol, and it does it for all 5. That's, again, one of the many beauties of Excel. All right. Let's talk about the mouse some more. We already talked about how if you're between the letters, you can widen columns, or if you're between the rows, you can actually make rows taller or smaller. What about the other things I mentioned, which were the weather vane and the thin black plus sign? So when it looks like a thick white plus sign, that's to make a cell active or to highlight an entire region of cells, whether it's a couple cells or like all of your important cells. So that's the thick white plus sign. When you have a cell active, so I've got soda active, if you hover over any of the border with exception to the bottom right, it changes to the bottom right. Anywhere else on that green border, it looks like a weather vane. This is how we move cells. So let's say I didn't put soda there. I typed soda over here on accident. And I go, dope, I was supposed to put it in cell B3. Instead of clicking it, backspacing, then clicking over here and typing it, instead what I can do is make the soda cell active. Hover over the border so the mouse looks like a weather vane, click and hold, and I can move this cell somewhere else. I can move it here. I can move it over here. And again, you got to grab it by the border. If you don't grab it by the border, you're not going to move it. See, if I try and grab the border of hot dog, that didn't work because it wasn't active. It's got to be active to move it. Maybe I just put all 5 of these in the wrong place originally. Maybe I typed them here. I definitely don't want to have to retype those 5 things and delete them and all that jazz, so I can thick white plus sign, highlight all 5 cells and let go, then hover over the border, click and hold, and drag them to where they're supposed to be. So moving is an excellent feature. It beats copy-paste, and I'm going to let you know, copy-paste in Excel can act very wacky. Even your teacher can't figure it out half the time when I get some weird copy-paste issues. So not a huge fan of copy-paste. I tend to like to move things. I mean, copy is fine, but paste acts wacky. Either way. All right, so that's your move feature. What about the thin black plus sign? What does that do? So let me just have hot dog activated. Sounds like a power-up, hot dog activated. All right, so we put your mouse over the bottom right border of the active cell to look like the thin black plus sign. That's the only place it looks like that. Anywhere else, doesn't look that way. Click and hold, and if I drag down, I can drag down to just one more cell and let go, and it's just gonna basically copy paste it. Or if I hit undo, click and hold. Maybe I want hot dog to be in several spots. Undo. If I highlight all of these labels and I drag them down another 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, it will just keep looping through them. Let's say I just have the number 1 type somewhere. This is me starting a list of 10,000 things. So I want to have the columns labeled for first scenario, second scenario, third scenario, all the way down to the 10,000th scenario. I don't want to have to type 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, all the way to 10,000. That's going to take me half an hour probably. What I can instead do, I'll highlight and then hit the delete button. That's what I'm doing there. I have my 1 here. Make that cell active. Click the fill handle. Now, spoilers, this is going to be wrong. Click the fill handle and drag it down. And I'm not going to do 10,000 of these. Let me just do like some. Well, all that did was just copy paste the ones. That's not labeling 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Well, Mr. Beckner, what did you do wrong? Maybe I want a number copy pasted over and over, so it's great to have that feature. But in this instance, what I really wanted was to use the control button on my keyboard. Remember I said control changes some features? So click the fill handle, drag down, at some point hit control, and then when I let go, watch what happens now. So I'm holding control down, but I'm going to let go of the mouse. I'm still holding control and I let go of the mouse. That gives me my incremented numbers 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 15, all the way up to 10,000 if I needed, in literally a couple seconds versus taking 30 minutes to type out 10,000 numbers. Pretty awesome. You can do this with dates as well. So if I type in January 1st, make it active. And I don't even have to use control for that. That was just me clicking and dragging. That would be great for a budget. That might be a project. Okay, so here's my version of the notes for that stuff. Thick white plus sign, just much more abbreviated than the text. Selects or highlight cells. When it looks like a weather vane, it's used to move cells. And you grab the border of the cell to make it look like a weather vane. The thin black plus sign is used to fill things down. It's used to fill formulas mainly for us, but it can fill lots of other things. Fill means to auto-populate something. So that little black square at the bottom right, I'll come back to this in a second. That little black square is what we call the fill handle. Write that down. That's called the fill handle, F-I-L-L, not P-H-I-L. I can't just leave this up here for 15 minutes though, so just catch the video if you need to write any of this down. We've got to keep moving. A lot to cover. All right. So next up, what we want to do is start populating these costs. So this cost right here would be the total cost that someone spent in soda. What we're making is a sales order form for like a hot dog vendor at a concert or something like that. Not just hot dog, but a food vendor. I don't know why I said hot dog. I'm hungry. I haven't had lunch yet, I guess. It's not lunchtime. So if somebody bought one soda at $1 per, that means they spent $2 for total cost of soda before accounting for tax and all that jazz. If they bought 2 sodas, if I change this to 2, then this cost should be $2. But I don't want to just have to update this and say that's 2. And then, okay, well, the next day they sold 5, so 5, and then I got to do the calculation. That would be 5. If I sold 10 waters, that would be $12.50. But this is me doing the math. And you might say, well, why not just write 10 times 1.25? When I do that, it just displays 10 times 1.25. And that is the multiplication symbol for Excel, which is Shift and 8. To use formulas, which again, we are not supposed to be doing these calculations. We're supposed to be letting Excel do it for us. To use formulas, the first thing you have to do is type in equals. So instead of writing 5 times 1, again, that just displays 5 times 1, I have to type in equals first. Whenever you want Excel to think for you, to do the calculations for you, the first thing you have to type is equals. If you don't type equals, Excel won't think for you. So then I could say, all right, well, I had 5 sodas and they were $1 per. So the basic idea there is quantity times cost per item. I'll have that formula displayed soon, which is very, very basic. So 5 times 1. And now it actually says that the cost is 5. I could then change the format to the dollar symbol to have it more appropriately done. But this isn't the way to do things, because check this out. We really only sold 1 soda that day. Watch the cost. Nothing happened. Now I got to go in and there say, oh, okay, it's not supposed to be equals 5 times 1. I can double click to bring that back up, or I could have just ended it up here. Now it's supposed to be 1 times 1. Again, this is not what we're supposed to be doing. What I want to have happen is when I change this to a 1 or a 5 or a 52, I want the cost to update snap of a finger immediately. So how do we do that? We use cell references. So instead of saying equals 52 times 1, we say equals this cell, then times this cell. So Excel formulas start with an equal sign. So equals and then whatever you're supposed to be doing, and you're going to be referencing cells. You're going to have things like C3 and D9 in those equations. So again, I mentioned specifically, to find the cost of a group of items, it's the number of items times the cost per item. I wouldn't even call this a formula, I'd call that a concept, because it can be extended in many, many ways. And the same idea that sales tax is the product of a sales tax rate and a cost of items. Ignore this for just a second. There we go. So this is something we'll use soon. All right, so this is the formula we're supposed to be typing in Excel. We don't type the left side. This is saying the answer in Excel will be, you go equals, we'll type the cell for the number of items, then times, and the cell for the cost per item. So there was 1 soda originally. So we're going to clear that. We go equals. So the cell where the soda quantity is in is C3. So we type C3. Now watch this. Watch what happened. There's this blue box now there. I erase C3, it's not there anymore. So when I type C, nothing happens. But when I type the 3, now I'm finishing a cell reference, and that little blue bit says, hey, you mean me? Why, yes, I do. Thank you, Excel. That was very polite of you. Then I can go times, Shift and 8. And then I need to be multiplying it by the cost per soda, which is this $1. So I type in, that's D3, D. Now when I hit the 3, it's going to go, you mean me? Why, yes, I do mean you, red box. That way, if I accidentally type D, let's go with 10, I definitely do not mean to be multiplying the blue box and the red box here. I'm supposed to be multiplying these. So I go, nope, I'm making a mistake. Let me backspace and change that to a 3. Looks good. Now watch what happens when I hit enter. It's not going to say equals C3 times D3 anymore displayed. It's going to say, drum roll, $1, which is exactly what 1 times 1 is. Check this out. If I change the soda quantity to 5, watch the cost box. It's not going to be $1 anymore. It's going to be $5. If we sold 52 sodas, the cost is 52. It's doing all the work for you besides just typing a number into a box. Whoop-de-doo. So again, that was click the cell to make it active. Equals C3, I typed it, times D3. We hit enter. Now it displays what the actual math answer is, the number, right? If you double click that cell though, it will redisplay the formula and you could change it if you needed to edit it, or you can edit it up here. Now I'm going to do this one more time, but a completely different way. I still have to type my equals, but instead of typing cell references, you can actually use your mouse and click, which me personally, I prefer, because then you won't accidentally type something wrong. It's a lot easier to get your clicking right than your typing right, in my opinion, but you don't have to do it my way. I showed you an alternate way. So I just click where the cell was, C3, click. It still gives me the blue box, and in fact, it's a little different. It moves now, just to say, hey, you sure you mean this one? I still have to type my times, and then I click the cell D3. So it's still the same product. It displays the formula accurately. I hit enter and I get the same thing. So we could do this for all 5 of these. But remember I said your boss sent you 10,000 formulas to have to do. So there's 10,000 items we're selling in theory here. How do we clean that up? How do we do this? Do I keep typing it? No, there's a fill handle, but let's just show the tedious way. So I'd go equals. Now the water quantity is this box, so I can click it or type C4, then my times, and then I could click or type cell D4. Look what happens. We didn't sell any waters. I didn't label it as 0. Even if I do label it as 0, this is a dash. So when you use formulas in Excel, if it's using a blank one or a 0, it just dashes it. So this is basically saying the cost was $0, just so you know. Let's go ahead and finish the rest of these quantities though. Specifically, it's 2 waters, 3 popcorns, 4 cookies, and 5 hot dogs. I'm going with what the text says. Again, your worksheets, they might be different numbers, but once again, that is not the point of the problem. So it doesn't matter what any of these numbers are typed. It's the equals and the C3s and the dragging and stuff. That's what we're learning here. So let me delete the formula I typed here. And now let's use the fill handle. So I don't want to fill this formula down. This is where I typed a formula. So I got to click that one. I got to make it active. Now, we know that we want to multiply these 2 things together. So the good thing about Excel is if you put your mouse over the fill handle, so it looks like that thin black plus sign, click and hold, drag down, let go. It just did all the work for us. That's the same answer we would have seen if we had typed equals C4 times D4. Let me click somewhere else, and let me double click where the 250 is, and look at that. It did it for us. So Excel knows, since this formula is going down 1 row, it says, you probably want to use the next row's numbers. Notice I said probably, because it's not always the case. Sometimes we don't, but definitely in this case. And you don't have to do these one at a time. Let me delete it. Let me do all 5 at once. So activate the cell where you typed the original formula. Click, drag down to all 5 of those, or 4 future ones. Let go. And boom, we just handled 5 formulas with 1 instance. If these were 10,000 different items, all I would have done is click this one, grab the fill handle, grabbed it down 10,000 rows, and we're done. That's it. Yeah, if you double click, it shows, you mean multiply these 2? Yep, definitely. If I click somewhere else, while that was active, it puts this E6 there. If I click somewhere else, it puts a C10 there. If I hit enter, it's going to give me errors and all sorts of stuff. So do I want to accept this correction? Yes. It looks like trash, so what do? We hit undo, my favorite button. I have done what you just saw there 10,000 times. Trust me. I'm not lying. They also wanted us to color these cells. I forgot to mention that. I got so excited to do the formulas. So let's maximize this and make those yellow and green colors appropriately. So they wanted the quantity boxes to be yellow, not highlighter yellow though, so let me pull the drop-down menu and just get more of a kind of duller yellow, I guess, something like this maybe, or this. Now let's highlight the costs, and they wanted them to be kind of that puke green color, so we can go and select that. And then they wanted these 3 boxes to be that same color. Now, since the last color I used was that green, my paint bucket remembers that, and I can just click the paint bucket. I don't have to go to the submenu again. It always remembers your last option chosen. If you look really carefully, though, you'll see that this doesn't just have colors. Look at the boxes. There's like a darker border around all the yellow section, as well as lines between each cell. That's not seen here. There's no line seen here, here. Or borders really around it. That's this option right here. This is your border button. The drop down shows you all the various different options you have. Spoilers, all borders is generally what we want. This is generally the one we want. So let's highlight. So click, hold, drag, not over an active cell, over an inactive cell. Let's click the drop down menu and click all borders. Do the same thing for this cost section. Click over an unactivated cell, hold, drag, all borders. Click, hold, drag, all borders. Just makes it a little more emphatic. I'm going to delete these dates as well. We don't need that up there. All right, we're trucking. Also, something to note that I forgot to mention, when we filled in this formula, this was not originally formatted to currency, but this one was, and we had a formula that used it. So Excel said, this person probably wants the answer to be a currency as well, so it did that. Now, if for some reason you didn't want it displayed that way, you can go and change that format to something different. You just want it to be nothing, there you go. But that was correct of it to do. It's usually right. All right, we already talked about this stuff. By the way, that was one of the questions on that workbook. Remember that you're supposed to be completing, whether I ask you to submit that stuff or not in a discussion board, which I don't plan on, I don't want to have to. It's for your own good. Remember, you can type or click cell references. Remember, you have to do equals for it to be a formula. So formulas use variables and constants and parameters. Again, I'm not too worried about you knowing these definitions inside and out. Variable, the numbers you input, blah, 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 blah. Constants, that's the tax rate here, which I'm going to change to a variable sooner than later. Parameters, that's the cost per items or the parameters because they tend to remain fixed but can be changed under different circumstances. Whatever. Again, not the important numbers. Excuse me, the important things just to memorize blanket definitions. So we did all this, we filled it down, we talked about how as we went down each row, the formulas changed, those numbers were changing. If we fill a formula right, then the row changes, it's the letter that changes. All right, so let's get to the second section, which is much shorter than the first, using built-in functions. There are 5 functions that are built in that we'll use throughout the semester primarily: sum, max, min, average, and count. You'll see that on the screen shortly. The 2 we use the most are sum and average. Max and min, here and there. Count is really kind of an optional thing. Excel has got thousands of built-in functions. I don't even know most of them, admittedly. I probably know a couple hundred. In terms of ones that I use actively, probably 10 of them, quite honestly, because Excel's just got a lot of statistics stuff built in that I don't really do statistics, generally speaking. It's not my favorite math subject. It's not terrible. It's a great concept, but I like more things like this and algebra and calculus. Not that you care. So subtotal. A subtotal just adds up all the different prices. So we had $1 worth of sodas, we had $2.50 worth of waters. We just need to add those up. But again, we don't want to have to literally add 1 plus 250 plus 450 ourselves. We want to make Excel do the work. Now we could just go equals and then this cell and a plus and this cell and a plus and this cell. But if there were 10,000 of these, you're going to hate it. So sum is a great built-in function. You will use this one over and over and over and over and over. And the format for it is, let's go to my notes, this thing that I mentioned earlier. You type equals, so it knows it's a function, it's a formula. Then you write 3 letters, sum, upper or lowercase, won't matter. Then you have to open a parentheses. After that, you will type the first cell that you want to add, then a colon, and then you'll type the last cell that you want to add. Now you have to go across a row or a column or an entire grid. You can't just be skipping around using this format. You do commas instead, which is generally nothing we do in here. And then you close your parentheses. So again, this is what we call syntax. You have to memorize the syntax of Excel. This is what all the ones we will use look like. There are many other syntaxes as well, though, that we won't get into. So again, equals sum, open a parentheses, and then the first cell and last cell, these are cell references with a colon between them and closing a parentheses after. So let's try that out. So subtotal, I have it activated. Equals, because if I just watch this, if I do it, I'll do it wrong. Sum, there's no equal sign. Parentheses. The first cell we want to add in that range is E3, so I type E3. then a colon. The colon is say, hey, go until you hit this cell. So we want to add all of these until we hit cell E7. E7, close the parentheses, hit enter, and it just says sum blah, 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 because we didn't do our equals. So let's try again. Equals sum, open a parentheses. Remember, you don't even have to type, you can click. So I can type E3 or I can just click where E3 is, colon, and then I can click or type cell E7. If I'm clicking, I can actually just hold and drag as well instead of using a colon. So there's a couple different ways. Close your parentheses, hit enter, 2375. So let me show you that one more time. Equals sum, open a parentheses. This time I'm going to click and hold. So I click cell E1 and I'm holding, and I'm going to drag down. Watch the formula as I drag down another one. It goes to E5, E6, E7, E89, E10. You don't want to do that, but you could. And then I let go, and all I got to do is close the parentheses. Hit enter. In fact, actually, when you use your mouse to hold and drag, for some reason you don't have to close the parentheses, but that's the only case. If you type everything, you have to manually type the closed parentheses too. So it's kind of weird, but just learn a method and use it. You don't have to learn all the methods. Learn one and use it. And that is exactly what those are. So if I change the sodas to 500 sodas, 500 sodas, 500, thank you, computer. Now the cost of sodas changes to $500 and the subtotal rockets up to $522. If I change this to 1,001 hot dogs, all these things update. Uh-oh, and I did this intentionally. Where'd my number go? If you hover over it, it actually tells you that number is 275275 there, but why isn't it displaying in the green box? It's because our zoom is a little too far in or far out to display that number. The number's too big for the box. So you could sometimes zoom in or out using the mouse wheel. Sometimes it'll display it. It just depends. So it's not doing it, which was, again, my intention. So the other option you have is to widen. You can widen the column. So if I widen the column, boom, now it displays. So Excel didn't do anything wrong. It was just too small of a space to put the number. But it was 1 soda and 5 hot dogs. Let's just keep the numbers simple for now. How do we calculate sales tax? Well, we already kind of showed you the formula for a second as a quick reminder. And this is something you must know all semester long. This is a very basic idea. A percentage of something is always the percent times the base value. If you want to calculate a discount, it's the same formula. If you want to calculate a commission, it's the same formula. If you want to calculate interest on one compounding interval, very specific there, it's the same formula. Interest rate times the balance. It's a product of a percent and a number. That's all tax, commission, discounts, markup as well. Simple interest, they're all the same thing. So for the sales tax, and this is 8%. Now this cell is not just 8%, this is a label. So I can't use this as a cell reference. If I wanted to go equals, so it's 8%, so I think it's the cell, again, this is wrong, times the subtotal, it says, nope, that's trash, because this doesn't just say 8%. So instead what I have to actually do is equals, I have to type the 8%. Now you might say, Mr. Beckner, don't you need to make that a 0.08? If you're doing it by hand or with traditional calculators, yes, but Excel knows that 8% is 0.08. So I can type the 0.8%, then the times, and then I can click or type cell E9, hit enter, boom, $1.90. And that makes sense. This isn't some outrageous value. The total is just adding a subtotal and tax. You could use sum again, but because it's only 2 of them, I'm just going to go equals this cell plus this cell. I almost clicked the wrong one. Again, I could have used sum, and I'll show you what it would look like. So 2565 is the magic number. Remember, double-clicking on things highlights, shows your formulas, make sure everything looks right. Let me clear it though, and instead go equals sum, open parentheses, click the first and hold, drag, gives me the colon automatically. I can close the parentheses, or with this one feature, I don't have to. You get the same answer at 2565. I mentioned another function that's used quite often for us is average. Maybe I just want to say what's the average number of items sold out of all these. So I can go, and I'm going to delete this in a second, equals. I cannot abbreviate it. I have to spell out the word average, open parentheses, and then click, hold, and drag. Click, hold, drag, boom. The average number of items sold was 3. It's a lot easier than just adding 1 plus 2 plus 3 plus 4 plus 5 and then dividing by 5, especially if there were 10,000 of them. Okay. We don't want to talk about that page besides one feature. And now they say, okay, the sales tax is 8%. We're stuck in one state, whatever state has 8% sales tax. What if we want to be in a state with 5%? What if we want to be in a state with 0% like Oregon or Delaware or Alaska or the other 2 states that have no sales tax? So I want to make this a little more general. So I'm just going to change this to say sales tax. And then to the side, they want us to put in cell G9 and 10, tax rate and the value of 8%. So G9, word tax rate, words, and then 8%. Make sure you do the percent symbol or convert it, because if otherwise it's going to think it's 800% if it just says 8. So now I want to be in a state where the base sales tax is 5%. So I want to be able to just type a 5 here, and then the sales tax would update and the total would update. Watch what happens though. It doesn't. Or if I make this a 0, it shouldn't say any sales tax, but it doesn't change. Why isn't it changing? Because in this formula, we didn't use a cell reference for the 8%. We literally typed the 8%. So we need to go back and make it a cell reference. So double click to pull up the formula where it says 8%, get rid of that and use the cell reference, not where it says the word tax rates, where it has the number, 5% here. So that's cell H9. So now I'm going to be multiplying cell H9, which is the 5%, by the subtotal of 2375, and now the sales tax and the total should update. Drum roll, boom. The sales tax is less, which makes sense. The total is less, which makes sense. Maybe we live in some state, actually let's say we're going to a restaurant in Virginia, sales tax is about 12% roughly, like 12.25 or 12.5, depends on the city, because of the dine-in tax, which is rough. So now we're at a restaurant, let's see what happened, and that would make sense since this is kind of like a restaurant, right? So let's see what the sales tax updates to, if it does. It does, and it got bigger, it got significantly bigger relative to what it originally was, because it's a higher tax rate. Maybe we live in some evil place and the tax rate is 50%. Or maybe we're buying, not the word syntax as in an Excel formula, the 2 words SIN tax, like with tobacco and alcohol and things like that, where they're taxed extremely high in addition to the sales tax. Now we have a very large sales tax amount, and that is half of that. And it's actually 11,875, but again, it's only going to display 2 decimals because it's money, and we can't pay 875. They're just going to round up to 88 cents for us. So this is a much better idea. It gives you a lot more pliability. You can play around with things. If you do a sales tax of 0, one of those 5 magical states, although they have their downsides too, they just tax you higher elsewhere. Now it says that the sales tax is 0 because it's a dash, which means the total is literally the subtotal. So again, I can't just type the 8% here and have it magically change. I would have to go in and change the formula myself. So it's just better, like we have these soda, water, popcorn, cookie, and hot dog values in there to easily change. Like, oh, I want 30 popcorns instead sold. I wanted 22 waters sold. I wanted big soda day, 800 sodas. Hot dogs were dirt cheap that day. I don't know. The hot dogs were on sale, so now they're only $1 that day, so we sold 1,001 of them. The tax rate at this ballpark was 9%. Look how quickly I can change things, and I don't have to think. Excel does the thinking for me. It does it for you. And again, especially if you're dealing with 10,000 scenarios, you cannot deny the power of this. So please do not be the student who just says, I'm never doing Excel in this course. because it's powerful. It can save you a lot of time, and you just never know what type of job you might have the opportunity to get into with having some very, in my opinion, basic skills with this computer program, because we're only scratching the surface in this course of Excel. We're doing less than 1% of what it's capable of. I'm only capable of about 5% of it, honestly. But again, I know enough to get by. If there were things I needed to know that I don't know, I'd learn them and then I would. But I don't, so I don't. We only have 24 hours in a day, right? So many years to be here. So I really do try and limit the exposure of what you have to know in Excel. The main things are typing in numbers, typing in formulas, filling the formulas, creating charts. So next class, we'll talk about creating charts. And next class, as well as over the next week, we'll talk about, remember how when I dragged this formula down, it changed the 3s to 4s, to 5s, to 6s? There's a way to make that not happen, because sometimes we don't want that to happen. Like maybe I had this as a reference and I had it for 10,000 rows. If this is going down, I'd need to type 9% here, 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 and here, and here. So instead of typing that 10,000 times, why not just do what we call fix that cell reference and make it not move? Because there is a way to make these boxes not move either up or down or left or right or either. So we'll get into that over the next week. It's called fix cell references, but for now, we've done enough. If you have any last second questions, go ahead. Besides that, please remember that you have assignments to start working on. You have a quiz based on the syllabus. You have to start creating the file that we just worked on. Please make sure you save it. Make sure you're always saving your homeworks as well. It is a good idea to put your name in those. So the homework would be the syllabus quiz, the Excel assignments, and reading. Absolutely. So are there any assignments due in my math lab yet? No. The first assignment due in my math lab will be 1.1. We're still in chapter 0, so we got a ways to go. That assignment probably won't be due for another week or week and a half. The first Excel assignment, official Excel assignment where you just have to do a couple things, will not be for another, again, roughly week and a half in terms of due date. This is kind of the oddball where I just want to make sure that everybody's doing something. And again, I'm not grading this for accuracy. I'm grading that I see you did it, you tried. I feel like accuracy should be easy to achieve with a recorded video of this. But again, you can email me with any questions. But again, this is more counting as your participation grade for this week. This is our quote, discussion board instead of actually doing a discussion board. And I know that's weird, but it makes sense to me. Thank you. Someone answered in chat the question. I saw a lot of questions today that were all answered in the first class, which tells me a couple things. A, some students didn't watch that video, or B, there was so much information all at once that you were just oversaturated with it. You didn't record these things, but please know they're important to get straight sooner than later. And again, I'm not shunning anyone for that. And I do know that some people may have signed up late, like right after the first lecture was done, and didn't know to go watch the lecture inside of Canvas. But hopefully now everyone has everything down. But like I said, I'm always happy to take emailed questions. Yeah. So if that's it, we'll call it. This was fun. I hope you learned a little something. I hope you do this on your own to learn a lot of something. I hope you're ready to go with the challenges we're going to face, and just understand that I won't stretch you too far, but I will stretch you a little in terms of challenges. So have a good day. Have a good weekend. My math lab, this is funny. Beckner 40333. There we go. All right. Have a good one, everybody. Take care. We'll see you next week.
Thank you.
No problem.